I think it's not a secret to any viewer that Washington is dominated by big money interests and by lobbyists. The reason that we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs is the power of the pharmaceutical industry. The reason that we're the only country in the industrialized world not to have national health care because of the power of the insurance company. The reason that we are currently going through this incredible bailout of Wall Street, which is putting trillions of dollars of American taxpayers at risk, is because of the power of Wall Street. So as a progressive independent, I see my job is to standing up to these big money interests who have so much power, trying to rally grassroots America to take on these very powerful forces so that government begins to work for all of the people and not just the wealthy and large corporations.
We are now faced with the issue of what we do with the Bush tax cuts of 2001 and 2003. And if you can believe it, we have people here, many of my Republican colleagues, who tell us, oh, I am so concerned about our record-breaking deficit. I am terribly concerned about a $13.7 trillion national debt, terribly concerned about the debt that we're going to be leaving to our kids and our grandchildren. But wait a minute, it's very important that we give over a 10-year period $700 billion in tax breaks to the top 2%. We talk about a lot of things on the floor of the Senate, but somehow we forget to talk about the reality of who is winning in this economy and who is losing. And it is very clear to anyone who spends 2 minutes studying the issue that the people on top are doing extraordinarily well at the same time as the middle class is collapsing and poverty is increasing. But the highest priority of many of my Republican colleagues is to make sure that millionaires and billionaires get more tax breaks. I think that that is absurd. I am sure that in a little while my friends are going to come down to the floor and say, we're very concerned about the deficit, we're very concerned about the national debt, but you know what we're more concerned about? Giving huge tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country. We just don't have enough money for working families and their needs. We're going to cut back on food stamps. We're surely not going to expand unemployment compensation. We got a higher priority, Mr. President. We have got to give tax breaks to billionaires. I mean, that's what this whole place is about, isn't it? They fund the campaigns. They get what's due them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Chairman. So my question to you is, will you tell the American people to whom you lent $2.2 trillion of their dollars?
Congratulations, you are, in many respects, a true American hero tonight. You have revealed $9 trillion in taxpayer spending. How does that feel?
Well, I think, Elliot, what we have begun to do is lift the veil of secrecy at one of the most important American agencies, and that is the Federal Reserve, of which the American people know very little. And I think what you are seeing is the incredible power of a small number of people who sit on the Fed, who, in my view, have incredible conflicts of interest, getting incredible help from the taxpayers of this country, while at the same time ignoring the needs of the people who bailed them out.
What this resolution is about is whether we go forward in public policy based on science or based on politics. That's really what this resolution is about.
I think what we should be doing is working together. The White House, the House, and the Senate should be going out across this country and making it very clear that it is a moral outrage for the Republicans to be holding hostages the needs of the middle class for their billionaire friends. And let me say something else to you, Tavis. If we cave in on this proposal, I will 100% guarantee you that as soon as this cave-in takes place, this vote takes place, that the next day or a week or a month later, the Republicans will come back and say, well, that's a good start. But now the national debt has gone up. We need to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, environmental protection. So what these guys will do, having given tax breaks to the rich, driven up the national debt, they're now going to use that as an opportunity to slash programs that millions and millions of middle-class and working-class Americans depend upon. So the fight is going to come. In my view, I may be wrong on this, I don't think I am. This
Hey Bernie, it's Michael Moore, and I'd like for you to just explain to people the basic things that are, what's wrong with American capitalism these days?
Capitalism does a lot of things that are well, that they do it well. It creates wealth, it sparks the entrepreneurial spirit, and that's great. But on the other hand, what we have had, especially since the Reagan administration, is an unfettered, cowboy-type capitalism, which has ended up with the shrinking and decline of the middle class, a very significant increase in poverty, and the reality that the people on top, the top 1% or 2%, are making out like bandits. Top 1% earns more income than the bottom 50%. That is, to my mind, immoral. And from an economic perspective, it is not good. You have CEOs of large corporations making 400 times more than their workers. I'd like somebody to explain to me how that makes any sense, both from a moral and an economic perspective. The United States today has the highest rate of childhood poverty. We are the only nation in the industrialized world that doesn't guarantee health care to all of its people. When kids go to college in America, they often come out $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in debt. I think all of that is wrong, and I think as a nation, we can do a lot better than that. Now, you look at some countries in Scandinavia and Europe, and what they have said is, sure, we want to capture the entrepreneurial spirit, but we want a strong social safety net that protects the middle class and working people.
To be honest with you, I also worry about concentration of ownership in media, where you have a handful of media conglomerates largely controlling what we see, hear, and read. To some degree, NPR and the PBS offer an alternative to that. So I do support funding for the PBS.
Shouldn't we be focusing on creating jobs in infrastructure, stopping the absurdity of importing $350 billion a year of foreign oil, move toward energy independence, and at the same time go forward with deficit reduction in a fair and progressive way, which doesn't hurt middle class and working class families?
How did it come about that Congress deregulated Wall Street so they can basically do anything they want, sell worthless derivatives, do the subprime mortgage business with it, which they did, which brought us to where we are? How does it happen that over a year after the crisis, Congress has not yet acted in a forceful way to go forward with real financial reform? Might it have something, my friends, with the fact that over the last 10 years, the financial interests on Wall Street have spent over $5 billion, yes, $5 billion on campaign contributions and lobbying activities. $5 billion. Well, you ask, let's get off of Wall Street. What about prescription drugs? How is it that in the United States of America, we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? In some cases, 2 or 3 times the price for the same exact drugs sold in Canada or in Europe. Do you think maybe it has something to do with the fact that since 1998, the pharmaceutical industry has spent over $1.6 billion on lobbying, and that maybe it has some effect, some reason related to the fact that they have over 1,100 lobbyists right here in Washington? That's more than 2 for every member of Congress. The amount of money we spend on the military, despite the end of the Cold War, goes up and up and up. The bottom line is you cannot do your job here in Washington unless you are in contact with ordinary people, unless you know what they're thinking about, and unless you're hearing from them very strongly.